Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to our latest stories. Before I start, tell me where you are watching me from. I wonder which cities and towns will join me in this memory that will follow me for years. I remember the morning as if it had been carved into my memory with a kind of delicate precision that only the unexpected can bring. The sun had just started spilling over the edges of the buildings, painting the streets with that soft amber glow that makes everything look familiar and foreign at the same time. I was sitting at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since cooled, lost in the rhythm of my routine. It was a quiet kind of morning, the kind where the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional chirp of a bird were the only sounds filling the space around me. I had no idea that in a few moments, the day would unfold into something I hadn't seen coming. The knock on the door startled me, not because it was loud, but because I didn't expect anyone. I hesitated for a second, coffee in hand, wondering if I should just ignore it. Maybe it was a neighbor or a delivery person. But something in the rhythm of the knock, the pause, then two quick raps, made my heart tighten in a way that felt like it knew the difference between routine and intrusion. I set the cup down carefully, almost afraid to make a sound, and walked to the door. When I opened it, I froze. My father was standing there, looking older than I remembered, his hair thinner around the edges, the lines on his face deeper, but his eyes, the eyes that had always been full of quiet understanding and stubborn pride, were unmistakably his. He held a small duffel bag, and there was a hesitant smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I didn't expect to see you today," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "I know," he said, his voice low, careful, as if he, too, was navigating a space he didn't fully understand. "I just thought I should come. I wasn't sure how, or even if, you'd want me here. But I needed to see you." I stepped aside, letting him in, and for a moment, the silence between us was more than just quiet. It was the weight of years, the things said and unsaid, the distance that had grown almost imperceptibly over time. He set his bag down by the door and looked around, his gaze settling on the little details of my home. I noticed the way his eyes lingered on the framed photos on the wall, the small potted plants on the windowsill, the mugs I always kept in a neat row. It was a simple scan, but it carried something intimate, like he was trying to place himself inside the rhythm of my life. We moved to the living room, and I offered him a chair. He hesitated before sitting, like he wasn't used to being a guest here, like he was still learning how to exist in a world that had grown separate from the one we had shared. I poured us both a cup of tea, the steam curling between us, and for a moment, we just looked at each other, measuring the distance and deciding how to bridge it. "I know I've missed a lot," he said finally, and I could hear the weight of it in his voice. "Not just birthdays or holidays, but moments. Moments you didn't need me, or maybe moments I didn't realize you did. I'm sorry for that." I didn't know what to say at first. There were so many memories tucked away, some sharp with disappointment, others warm with nostalgia, and I wasn't sure which would surface first. But I felt the honesty in his words, the sincerity that had always been buried beneath his stubbornness and pride. I nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch between us, letting it carry the acknowledgement that sometimes words weren't enough, but presence was. We talked for hours that morning, and it felt like peeling back layers of years, each conversation revealing something new. He asked about my work, my home, even the garden I had started last year. I told him about the little things, the mundane details that felt monumental when shared with someone who truly wanted to know. And in return, he shared stories I had never heard before, small anecdotes from his youth, mistakes he had made, the fears he had carried silently. I listened, rapt, discovering pieces of him that had been hidden behind the figure of authority I had always seen. There was laughter, too, soft and genuine, filling spaces I hadn't realized had been empty for so long. And there was silence, comfortable and healing, moments where neither of us needed to speak because being together was enough. It was an unexpected closeness, not forced, not rushed, but unfolding naturally, like the slow bloom of a flower in spring. By the time the afternoon sun was slanting through the windows, casting golden patterns on the floor, I realized something profound. The visit, unannounced and unplanned, had become a bridge across time and distance, across the quiet misunderstandings and unspoken regrets. It had reminded me that connection, no matter how delayed or complicated, could still be found in small, deliberate acts of presence. And as he prepared to leave, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, there was a shift in the air, a subtle acknowledgement that while the past couldn't be rewritten, The future held the possibility of moments like this, fragile and beautiful, waiting to be cherished. I walked him to the door, and before he stepped outside, he looked at me with a gaze that was both steadfast and tender. "Thank you for letting me in," he said quietly. "Thank you for coming," I replied, and in that exchange, there was an unspoken promise, a promise that we could continue building something new from the pieces of what we had once known. He walked down the path, and I watched him go, feeling a warmth in my chest that lingered long after the door had closed. That day, ordinary in its beginnings, had become extraordinary in its honesty, in its simplicity, and in the quiet power of just being together. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most unexpected visits bring the deepest revelations, and that the heart has a remarkable way of recognizing home, even when it has been away for a long time. The memory of that morning stayed with me, a gentle echo that I would carry through years, a story of connection rediscovered, of love expressed in quiet, ordinary moments, and of a bond that could still grow, even when the road had been long and winding. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of lingering warmth, the kind that stays with you after an unexpected moment of joy. The memory of my father's visit had not faded overnight. Instead, it seemed to hum quietly in the background, like a soft melody I couldn't stop noticing. I went about my morning routine, but each step felt a little lighter, each breath a little fuller. Even the sunlight streaming through my window seemed different, more attentive, as if it had noticed the shift in my world. That I was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. "I keep thinking about yesterday. Can we meet again soon?" I stared at it for a long moment, feeling a mix of surprise and something deeper, a cautious hope that maybe this wasn't just a fleeting impulse. I typed back, "I'd like that. How about tomorrow afternoon?" and hit send, my heart fluttering with the anticipation of seeing him again, but also with a certain apprehension. When he arrived the next day, there was a difference in the way he moved, a quiet confidence that wasn't about arrogance but about familiarity, about stepping into a space where he now felt welcome. We sat on the porch this time, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers from my garden. The air was alive with the sound of rustling leaves and distant city noises, yet within our little bubble, there was an almost sacred quiet. We talked about lighter things at first, the books I was reading, a new recipe I had tried, memories from my childhood that made him laugh despite himself. But gradually, the conversation shifted, as it often does when comfort has been established, toward the deeper, more delicate truths. "I don't know if I ever told you this," he said, his gaze fixed on a cluster of clouds drifting lazily across the sky, "but when you were little, I used to watch you sleep sometimes. I know it sounds odd, but I just wanted to make sure you were okay, even when I was far away or busy. I think that's when I realized how much I didn't want to miss any part of your life." I felt a lump rise in my throat. Those words, simple and unguarded, carried decades of absence and regret, but also an undeniable love. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I always imagined you were too busy, or maybe too stubborn to notice the little things." He chuckled softly, and it wasn't the proud, slightly harsh laugh I remembered from my childhood. It was gentler, more human. "I was stubborn," he admitted. "But stubborn in the wrong ways. I didn't always know how to show up. I thought showing up in the big moments was enough, but I see now that the small moments matter too. I missed so many of those with you." We sat there in silence for a few moments, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but like it's holding something precious, waiting to be acknowledged. I could feel the layers of misunderstanding, of time lost, softening between us. There was an intimacy in that quiet, not the kind that crosses boundaries, but the kind that honors the space we each inhabit and the willingness to be present together. Eventually, our conversation drifted to the future. We made tentative plans, small outings, lunches, walks in the park. Nothing forced, nothing dramatic, just the building of shared experiences that could stitch together a bond that had been frayed by years of distance. It felt like constructing a bridge, one careful plank at a time, but each plank carried with it a promise. We were committed to walking this path together now. As the afternoon light began to fade, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, I noticed the way his hands rested on the railing, the subtle tension in his shoulders easing as he spoke, and I realized how much weight he had been carrying quietly all these years. And I thought about my own burdens, the assumptions I had made about him, the judgments I had held on to. The recognition was humbling and enlightening, an acknowledgement that we were both human, both flawed, and yet capable of reaching toward one another when it mattered most. Before he left, he placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. "Thank you," he said. "For listening, for letting me in again. I know it's not easy." "It's easier than I thought," I replied. "Easier because you've shown up. And I want more of this, more moments, more conversations. We can rebuild this, piece by piece." He nodded, a small smile touching his lips, and as he walked down the porch steps, I felt a sense of quiet anticipation for the days to come. That afternoon had been more than a visit, it had been a turning point, a subtle shift that promised growth, understanding, and the slow, deliberate mending of a relationship that had weathered years of distance. The memory lingered with me long after he left, a gentle reminder that the unexpected can carry with it the seeds of profound connection, and that sometimes, showing up even when it's awkward or imperfect, can open doors to moments of genuine closeness that change everything. A few days had passed since our second meeting, and I found myself thinking about my father more often than I expected. It wasn't just nostalgia or obligation, it was curiosity, the kind that grows quietly when you realize there are still chapters of a person's life you haven't read yet. I realized I wanted to know him again, not just the father I remembered from childhood, but the man he had become, shaped by years of experiences I hadn't been a part of. He called that morning, asking if he could come by. His voice carried a tentative warmth that made me smile, and I immediately said yes. When he arrived, it was as if the house had been holding its breath, waiting for his presence. The sun was high now, spilling over the city streets and bouncing off the windows, making everything feel sharper, more alive. He carried no bag this time, just a quiet confidence, and when I opened the door, I realized that the surprise of his visit no longer startled me. I was ready for it. We sat in the living room, sunlight streaming over the cushions, and I offered him a cup of coffee. We spoke about small things at first, the weather, a local event, a book I had been reading, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation, a subtle tension that neither of us tried to disguise. It was the feeling of waiting for a moment neither of us fully understood yet. Then, without any preamble, he said, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about how we've drifted, and how easy it is to assume that time heals everything. But time alone doesn't fix things, does it?" I shook my head. "No, it doesn't. It can make the distance seem normal, but it doesn't mend what's broken." He nodded, and in his eyes, I saw the reflection of shared regret, the acknowledgement that we had both carried our burdens in isolation. "I want to understand you better," he said softly. "Not the daughter I knew as a child, but the woman you've become. And maybe we can find a way to understand each other again." I felt a stirring of something I hadn't felt in years, hope. But it was tempered by caution, by the memory of past disappointments. Yet, looking at him sitting there, open and vulnerable, I realized that trust could be rebuilt not all at once, but in moments like this, in conversations that were honest and unguarded. We spent hours talking that day, moving from memory to memory, exploring our shared past and the separate paths we had taken. He shared stories of his youth, mistakes made and lessons learned, and I told him about my life, the successes, the struggles, the little choices that had shaped me. There was laughter, quiet moments, and even pauses filled with unspoken understanding. At one point, he reached over and gently touched my hand. It was not a sudden or dramatic gesture, but a simple acknowledgement of connection, a reminder that despite the years and distance, there was still a bond that could be felt, quietly and powerfully. "I've missed this," he said, "just being near you, talking, listening, sharing space." I nodded, feeling the weight of those words. "I've missed it too," I admitted. "And I'm glad we're finding it now, even if it took so long." The afternoon faded into evening, the light softening and the shadows lengthening across the floor. He didn't rush to leave, and I didn't urge him to stay. We existed in a comfortable rhythm, one that required no words at times, only presence. And in that rhythm, I realized that the distance between us had not erased the possibility of connection, it had only made the moments we shared more precious. When it was time for him to go, there was a gentle reluctance in the way he stood, a quiet acknowledgement of the temporary nature of our togetherness. But there was also a promise, unspoken yet palpable, that this was just another step in a journey we were now committed to taking together. "Thank you for letting me in," he said again, his voice carrying the weight of sincerity. "Thank you for coming," I replied, and in that simple exchange, the past and present seemed to coexist, allowing us to start building a future that neither of us had dared to imagine before. As I watched him leave, I felt a sense of profound calm. The visits, the conversations, the shared silences, they were shaping something new, a bond renewed through patience, honesty, and the quiet courage to keep showing up for each other. And I realized that this, more than anything, was what I had been longing for all along: the presence of someone who truly wanted to know me, to understand, and to walk alongside me through the years to come. Weeks had passed since our last visit, and yet the memory of those afternoons with my father lingered like the quiet echo of a familiar song. Each time I recalled his presence, I felt the warmth of connection, the subtle shift that had begun the moment he first stepped through my door unannounced. It was strange, almost miraculous, how something so ordinary as a visit could carry with it the weight of revelation, of healing, and of unexpected joy. That morning, the sky was pale with the hint of a coming rain, and the air smelled faintly of wet asphalt and spring blooms. I was arranging books on the living room shelf when the familiar sound of the doorbell broke my concentration. My heart lifted immediately, a mix of anticipation and comfort washing over me. He was here again. When I opened the door, he smiled, that same tentative, gentle smile, and I felt an ease in my chest I hadn't known I could feel. This time, he didn't just step inside, he stepped into the rhythm of my life. There was no hesitancy in his movements, no awkward distance. We were two people who had rediscovered the possibility of shared time, and each moment carried a quiet significance. We moved to the porch once more, the sky now a soft grey, and the scent of rain promised a change in the atmosphere, a cleansing of the world around us. The air between us was comfortable, filled with the natural pauses that come with familiarity. We spoke about the week, the small victories and setbacks, and the news in our neighborhoods. But underneath those words, there was an undercurrent of something deeper, a sense of mutual respect, of understanding, of acknowledgement for the journey each of us had taken. At some point, the conversation shifted, as it always seemed to do, from the superficial to the profound. He spoke of regrets, of decisions he had made and the ways he had wished to be different, not out of guilt, but out of understanding of how those choices had shaped the people around him. I listened, not with judgment, but with the curiosity and compassion that had grown within me over these weeks of renewed connection. I never realized, he said softly, how much courage it takes to live your life fully, to navigate it on your own terms. You've done so much, faced challenges I could only imagine, and here you are, stronger, wiser, and still, kind. I felt a lump rise in my throat, the words both touching and humbling. I learned from watching you, I said. Even when I didn't see it, even when I felt distance, there were lessons hidden in what you did, in the way you persevered. I just didn't know how to understand them until now. His gaze softened, and there was a brief pause where only the sound of raindrops pattering against the porch roof filled the air. It was a quiet, intimate moment, unforced and natural, where no words were necessary, yet every word spoken carried immense weight. We were learning each other again, discovering the layers that years of separation had both concealed and revealed. As the rain began to fall more steadily, we moved inside, letting the cozy warmth of the living room envelope us. He shared memories from his past that I had never heard, tales of moments of vulnerability and triumph alike. I spoke of my own experiences, of obstacles overcome and lessons learned. Every revelation, every small confession, deepened the sense of connection, making it tangible in a way that was both comforting and inspiring. By the time the afternoon melted into evening, the sky darkened into a muted blue, and the rain created a gentle rhythm against the windows. We had laughed, we had reflected, and we had simply existed together in a space where judgment had no place, only understanding, presence, and the shared desire to bridge the distance that time had created. When he finally rose to leave, I felt a quiet reluctance, the kind that comes when moments are precious and fleeting. But there was also a profound sense of peace. We had found a rhythm, a mutual respect and care that neither of us had expected could emerge so naturally. Thank you, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder with the gentleness of someone who knows the fragility of time. For letting me be part of your life again. Thank you for coming, I replied, feeling the weight and warmth of the words as they left my lips. For being here, and for showing me that it's never too late to build something meaningful together. As he walked down the path and disappeared from view, I stood by the window, feeling the calm that only genuine connection can bring. That day, ordinary in appearance, had been extraordinary in substance, a chapter of understanding, reflection, and renewed bond that would stay with me for years to come. Did I end those quiet moments after he left, I realized that our relationship had transformed. It was no longer just about family ties or obligation. It had become a deliberate, shared journey of discovery, respect, and care. And I knew, deep within me, that these unexpected visits, these moments of authentic presence, were the seeds of a new narrative, one of trust, closeness, and the profound beauty of simply being there for each other.